Hey, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with an all-new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. You may recall in yesterday's episode, I talked about uniforms. Specifically, I talked about three items connected to them. First is the lack of documentation. Second is standardization by 19th century standards with a lowercase s. And then the last but not least is customization with a capital C. This idea that Union and Confederate soldiers could customize their uniforms. So after yesterday's episode, I was looking through a group of scans that were sent to me by a collector. And in that group of scans, I found this very interesting tintype. For those of you who know Confederate uniforms, for those of you who know Civil War uniforms, this is easily one of the most unique, one of the most distinctive uniforms. I think I can safely say that. And I don't even know if I have to describe it, because what immediately jumps out is the most interesting pattern and shape that's on this soldier's jacket. So for those of you who are in the know, this is the uniform of the Sunflower Dispersers, which is also one of the most unique names of any militia company formed during the war. And there was Sunflower County, Mississippi, in early 1861, and they went on to become Company B of the 3rd Mississippi Infantry. The regiment goes on to participate in numerous actions, including the Vicksburg campaign, the Atlanta campaign, and the Tennessee battles of Franklin and Nashville. This gentleman here, this soldier here, is unidentified. We don't know his name. We currently don't know his name. Would love to find it out someday. But based on what we know of descriptions of this uniform, what you're looking at right now is a gray jacket that's trimmed in red. What we can see are the buttons that are moving down the front of the jacket. His hand is covering up the rest of the buttons. He has a number of buttons on his shoulders, which continues the red trim. There's a collar that's folded down. If you look closely at the cuff, you'll see more red trim. And then his cap, it's a matching gray cap with red trim. And there's a unique letter, W, which in most Civil War uniforms, most Civil War caps, that letter indicates a company, but companies didn't go up that high in letters. So the W is a little bit of a mystery. At least it's an unsolved mystery as far as I know. So I wanted to bring this image to your attention because there are a couple of other examples of this uniform that I think get to this idea of standardization in the 19th century. We certainly get the customization that's pointed out here, but standardization can not only vary within a regiment, it can also vary within a company, as you're going to see in two more images that I'm going to share with you. So let's get to this first image. What we have here is a soldier. This was published in Military Images recently. This is another Sunflower Disperser, and this one comes from the Matt Oswalt collection. And this image I really love because it shows a much more complete view of the uniform. So you can see a lot of common elements. You get a better view of the button-down front with that thick red trim, although the red trim looks slightly thicker than it is in the first image I showed you. Perhaps most notably recognizable, although it takes a second, is that the shape of the sunflower is different. There's no red circle in the middle, and the actual shape of the petals of the sunflower is slightly different. It's more rotated and curved compared to the first image. I also want to point out the cuffs. You get a much better view of the trim on those cuffs. It's as if they took red petals and moved them out along the cuffs. Also, he's got gray pants, a standard leather belt. In this particular case, he's got a model 1841 Mississippi rifle. So you get an idea of how they were armed during that early part of the war. So you can see this idea of company variation, this non-standardization. These two uniforms are different. I should point out the collar, the way he's wearing his collar in the first image turned down is different. The soldier in the center image here has his collar turned up. We can assume that the trim is probably similar. So I've got one more image that I want to show you. And this is the another sunflower disperser. It's in the Library of Congress collection. And as you can see, it has a lot in common with the first two images. It has that gray jacket. It's got the red trim. Interestingly, he has a W on his hat, which matches the first image. And so the icon, however, matches the second image. So you've got basically two images with a W on the cap, one image that does not have the W, and then you've got two different types of the actual sunflower pattern that's worn on the jackets. So the cuffs appear to be similar in all three as far as we can see. So you've got quite a bit of difference going on here in just these two uniforms. So I wanted to share that with you because it gets to this idea of the differences in uniforms. So when we're thinking about uniforms by 21st century standards, it certainly doesn't line up with what we see in the 19th century. So there's a little bit of follow-up, I guess, on yesterday's episode and the serendipitous discovery of a scan as I was checking through a new batch of images that came in from a collector. So that's all for today. We will see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Until then, happy trails.